Good evening from London, and hello to all dear comrades, friends and supporters from Dr. Dermot Hudson, the chairman of the British Group for the Study of the Juche Idea, chairman of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK and official delegate of the KFA for the UK, president of the Association for the Study of Songun Politics UK, and of course the owner of this very channel, Songun 007, the militant voice of Juche and Songun here in the UK, defending people's Korea with no ifs or buts. July 27th is an extremely important and significant date. It is the 70th anniversary of the victory of the Korean people, led by the great leader President Kim Il-sung, in the great Fatherland Liberation War against the US imperialists, the sworn enemy of the Korean people and of all progressive humanity. And we've had two events recently to mark that occasion. We had on Saturday 22nd a real life meeting in central London, and yesterday evening an online meeting. So we've done our bit to mark these anniversaries and show solidarity with no ifs or buts with people's Korea. History has seen many wars and conflicts between countries. In particular, there have been many wars for national liberation and independence. The great victorious Fatherland Liberation War of the Korean people against US imperialism is unique in many ways. It was the first direct war between US imperialism and a socialist country. The first hot war of the Cold War era. It was a conflict where you saw imperialism and socialism exchanging fire, and indeed it proved that peaceful coexistence between socialism and imperialism is an illusion, a myth. It was also a war fought between a former colony, because the DPRK had been a colony of Japan, and an imperialist power. However, what made the Fatherland Liberation War, or Korean War, quite unique was the massive disparity in strength between the US and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK. The DPRK's population was less than 1/15 the size of the US population, and its geographical area was less than 1% of the US. It was not just a question of geographical size or the size of the population. The DPRK had been founded less than 2 years before the outbreak of the Fatherland Liberation War on the 25th of June 1950, whereas the US had a history of over 150 years since it emerged on the bodies of the Native Americans and grew rich from the labour of black slaves. The history of the US was a history of conquest and expansionism. It had been involved in numerous wars, and in fact even in the 19th century it tried to invade Korea. Not a lot of people know that. But the main thing was that the US had been on the winning side in both world wars. It seemed unimaginable that once the US threw huge amounts of troops into the war in Korea that the DPRK would even survive, let alone hold its own against the colossus of the US imperialist superpower, which not only threw its own troops into the conflict, but those of 15 of its satellite states, including, to our shame, the UK. However, the Korean people had great Generalissimo Kim Il-sung, an ever-victorious, unwilled, brilliant commander and gifted military strategist who had gained precious experience in the 15-year-long anti-Japanese armed struggle. The Korean people also had the Juche Idea and Songun Idea, as well as their People's Democratic System. When the South Korean puppets under the command of the US imperialists attacked the DPRK, Generalissimo Kim Il-sung ordered the Korean People's Army and Korean People's Security Forces over to an immediate counter-offensive, thus denying the South Korean puppets and the US imperialists the advantage of surprise. On the third day of the war, 28th of June, Seoul, the South Korean puppet capital, was liberated by the Korean People's Army. Tank 312 was the first tank of the KPA to enter Seoul. This was disastrous for the South Korean puppets, who had originally boasted of, and I quote, having breakfast in Hachu, lunch in Pyongyang, and dinner in Sinuiju. This did not happen. Instead, the victorious KPA wiped out the South Korean puppet forces and liberated South Korea. The hated colonial fascist ruling machines were smashed and land was distributed to the peasants free of charge. The US started to heavily bomb all of Korea and drew into the war the forces from its satellite countries. This did not stop the advance of the Juche-orientated Korean People's Army, commanded by the great leader Marshal Kim Il-sung. The KPA smashed the Yankee imperialists at Osan. Torpedo boats of the KPA Navy sunk US cruisers and destroyers. The great leader, Generalissimo Kim Il-sung, personally commanded the Daejeon Liberation Battle. The US 24th Division was totally destroyed in the Daejeon Battle on July 20th, 1950, which was the actual 20th day after its arrival in South Korea. A young Korean People's Army soldier took Dean prisoner, and he was the first division commander of the US imperialist aggressor forces to be taken prisoner in the Korean War. This was a great feat of the heroic Korean People's Army to have captured a Yankee general. In the first stage of the war, the KPA liberated 90% of the territory of South Korea and 92% of its population. A truly remarkable accomplishment that was achieved by the self-reliant revolutionary armed forces of People's Korea under the command of the great leader, Generalissimo Kim Il-sung. The war raged on until July 27th, 1953, when the US kneeled down and signed the armistice agreement. Clark, the US commander who signed the armistice agreement, lamented his fate as the first US forces commander who failed to win victory and signed the armistice agreement. During the 3-year-long Fatherland Liberation War, the US imperialists had over 1 million soldiers either killed, wounded or captured, and they lost huge amounts of military materials. And this was only part of the bitter setbacks suffered by them in the war. They also suffered irretrievable political and moral defeats. It was a great victory for the Korean people and opened up a new era of anti-US, anti-imperialist struggle. Indeed, Korea was the war before Vietnam. The victory in the Fatherland Liberation War was due to the brilliant and outstanding commanding art of the great leader Generalissimo Kim Il-sung, a genius of military strategy and an ever-victorious, iron-willed, brilliant commander. It is a great example to the revolutionary peoples of the world that shows that a small country can defeat a big one, and that anti-imperialism will be ever victorious. Glory to the 70th anniversary of the victory in the Great Fatherland Liberation War. Long live Juche, long live Songun, long live the Korean People's Army, long live respected Marshal Kim Jong-un. And we wish the people of the DPRK and its supreme leadership happy celebrations of July the 7th in Pyongyang. Thank you for your attention in listening, watching this video. If you're not already a subscriber to the channel Songun 007, please consider subscribing, and to our affiliated channel Korean Friendship Association of the UK, and please share content from the channel as widely as possible. You can also support us by buying our publications. There'll be a link in the description. You can donate to KFA UK, and above all, support us by coming to our events, both real life and online. I wish everybody a good evening or a good day, depending on your time zone, and we'll see all of you again soon. Goodbye.